They told us New Guinea would be hell because of the Japanese. They were wrong. The enemy we could see wasn't what kept us awake at night. There are things in those jungles, ancient things, that don't belong in any war manual or intelligence briefing. I'm Corporal James Holloway, 32nd Infantry Division, and what I'm about to tell you was never filed in any official report. They'd have called us mad, thrown us in the stockade for shell shock. But I know what I saw circling above those blood-soaked ridges. I know the screams that came from men who vanished into mist. And I know why the natives refused to speak its name after dark. Some secrets die with soldiers. This one won't let me rest until it's told. Welcome to Combat Lore Files, where the shadows of war live on. Hit subscribe and get nightly drops of stories like this. They say the jungle doesn't take sides in war. They're wrong. August 1944. The transport ship lurched through the Bismarck Sea, and I gripped the rail hard enough to leave marks. Corporal James Holloway, 32nd Infantry Division, 23 years old, farm boy from Iowa. I trained for combat, memorized field manuals, qualified expert with the M1 Garand. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepares you for New Guinea. The smell hit first, a rotting sweetness that clung to your throat, decomposing vegetation, stagnant water, and something else. Death, I'd learn later. The island was a graveyard draped in green. We landed at 8 under a sky choked with humidity. The heat was biblical. Within minutes, my uniform was soaked through. Sergeant Kowalski barked orders as we formed up on the beach, but his voice seemed swallowed by the jungle wall looming beyond the sand. It looked alive, breathing, watching. "Move out," Kowalski shouted. We plunged into the green hell. The jungle canopy closed over us like a coffin lid. Sunlight became memory. Everything dripped, leaves, vines, our own faces. Mosquitoes formed black clouds around our necks. Each step through the mud sounded like pulling boots from fresh graves. The air itself felt thick enough to chew. Private Miller walked point, machete hacking at the undergrowth. Behind him, Davis muttered prayers under his breath. Kid from Brooklyn. 17, though he'd lied and said 19. His hands shook every time we stopped. Our orders were simple. Recon patrol along the Sepik River, establish forward positions, eliminate Japanese stragglers. But the locals told different stories. We'd been assigned 2 Papuan guides, weathered men with tribal scars and eyes that had seen too much. They moved through the jungle like ghosts, barely disturbing the foliage. But when Kowalski pointed toward a distant ridge, a jagged silhouette clawing at the clouds, both guides stopped dead. "Indava's roost," the elder one whispered, his English broken but urgent. "No go there. Bad place." "Bad how?" I asked. He wouldn't answer, just shook his head and refused to look at the ridge again. Kowalski laughed. "Superstitious natives. Probably Jap propaganda to keep 'em scared." He spat into the mud. "We go where command tells us to go." But I noticed something. The jungle around that ridge was quieter. No bird calls, no insect hum, just silence pressing down like a held breath. We made camp that first night in a clearing hacked from the undergrowth. Foxholes dug, perimeter set, 2-hour watches. Standard procedure. But standard didn't account for the way the darkness felt textured here. Layered. Like something was watching from just beyond the firelight. Davis took first watch with me. He kept glancing up at the canopy. "You hear that?" he whispered. "Hear what?" "I don't know. Like wings." I listened. Nothing but the usual jungle chorus. Frogs, cicadas, the distant cough of artillery from the main line. "It's nothing," I told him. "Get some sleep." But as I stared toward that forbidden ridge, I felt it too. Pressure behind my eyes. A wrongness I couldn't name. The Papuan elder sat apart from the rest, carving something into a piece of driftwood with a shark-toothed knife. When he caught me watching, he held my gaze and spoke one word. "Indava." Then he pointed at the sky. I didn't understand their fear then. I thought superstition was just another enemy we'd conquer. I was a fool. Fear has a smell. It's sharper than gunpowder and sweeter than blood. 3 days into the patrol, we hit the Japanese. It happened fast, the crack of an Arisaka rifle, the wet thump of a bullet finding flesh. Private Henderson went down screaming, clutching his stomach. Then all hell erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the jungle like lightning. The air filled with the staccato rhythm of gunfire and the metallic taste of spent casings. "Contact front," Kowalski roared. I dove behind a fallen log, returning fire at shadows that moved between the trees. The Japanese had dug in spider holes and camouflaged positions that made every tree a potential grave. We traded fire for what felt like hours but was probably 15 minutes. When the silence finally came, it was deafening. We'd lost 3 men, Henderson, Cooper, and a replacement whose name I never learned. The bodies were wrapped in ponchos and left for the graves registration team that would follow. But there was no time for ceremony. We were too exposed, too far from friendly lines. Kowalski ordered us to establish a defensive position near the base of the ridge, the one the guides had warned us about. Indava's roost. The Papuan elder approached me as I was digging my foxhole. His face was carved from shadows and deep lines. He carried the smell of smoke and herbs. "You camp here," he said, "not a question. A confirmation. A condemnation. Orders," I replied, driving my entrenching tool into the earth. "Orders." He repeated the word like it was foreign, meaningless. Then he knelt beside me, close enough that I could see the ritual scars across his chest. "You know why we call it Indava's roost?" I stopped digging. "Tell me." His eyes flicked toward the ridge, barely visible through the canopy. "Long ago, before the white man, before the Japanese, our people fought wars. Tribe against tribe. Much killing. Much blood." He drew a line across his throat. "Blood wakes Indava. Always has. Always will. What's Indava? Sky demon." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "It hunts when war comes. Takes men from the earth. Carries them to the clouds." He made a lifting motion with his hands. "We found them later. In the trees. In the rocks. Broken. Empty." I wanted to dismiss it. Folklore. Legend. The kind of stories every culture tells to explain the unexplainable. But something in his voice stopped me. This wasn't a campfire tale. This was testimony. "Our grandfathers made taboo," he continued. "No fighting near the roost. No blood spilled where Indava sleeps. But white man and Japanese." He gestured at the jungle around us, at the war consuming everything. "Too much blood now. Indava wakes. Have you seen it?" I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "My brother. 2 months ago. Japanese patrol came to our village. We ran. My brother ran toward the ridge. His hands trembled. I heard him scream. I saw wings. Big. Like the flying boats you come in, but alive. Leathery. When we found him, he was in a tree, 50 feet up. Eyes still open. The jungle around us seemed to press closer. Every shadow suddenly had depth. Dimension. Intent. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you listen." He placed something in my hand. A carved talisman, crude but purposeful. "Keep this. Stay near fire. Make noise. Indava hunts the silent ones." Then he stood and walked back to where the other guides huddled together, speaking in their language, voices low and urgent. I looked at the talisman. It was shaped like a bird, or something that had once been a bird, before it grew too large, before it became something else. That night, I slept with my rifle across my chest and the talisman in my pocket. I thanked him politely and forgot his words by morning. The jungle had bigger threats, or so I thought. Sometimes the worst wounds are the ones you never see coming. Private Miller was a good soldier. Reliable. Steady. The kind of guy you wanted on watch because he didn't fall asleep and he didn't spook easy, which made what happened to him so much worse. It was the 3rd night at the new position. The rain had stopped around 2,300 hours, leaving everything dripping and miserable. Miller took the midnight watch with Corporal Davis. Standard 2-man rotation. Overlapping fields of fire. Passwords changed daily. I was asleep in my foxhole when Davis started shouting. "Holloway! Kowalski! Somebody!" I grabbed my rifle and rolled out, heart hammering. The first thought is always Japanese, night raid, banzai charge, something coming through the wire. But when I reached the perimeter, Davis was alone, spinning in circles, his flashlight cutting wild arcs through the darkness. "Where's Miller?" Kowalski demanded. "I don't know. He was right here. Right fucking here." Davis's voice cracked. I turned around for maybe 10 seconds to check the left flank, and when I looked back, he was gone. We searched. Flashlights, torches, every man on high alert, expecting ambush. But there was no sign of Japanese activity. No footprints except our own. No broken foliage. No blood trail. What we found instead stopped us cold. Miller's rifle, leaning against a tree, safety still on. His helmet, lying in the mud 5 feet away. His boots, both of them, unlaced, empty, standing upright like he'd simply stepped out of them and walked away barefoot into the jungle. And the marks, deep gouges in the earth, starting where Miller had been standing. Not boot prints, not human. These were long, curved indentations like talons. 4 of them, each one as long as my forearm, driven into the soft ground with enormous force. "What the hell made these?" Davis whispered. Nobody answered. Kowalski ordered us to expand the search. We moved in pairs, weapons ready, scanning the canopy and the undergrowth. The Papuan guides refused to help. They stood at the edge of camp, speaking rapidly to each other, occasionally pointing at the marks in the ground. It was Private Harrison who found Miller. His scream brought us running. "Up! He's up! Oh God! He's up!" Harrison stood beneath a massive ironwood tree, flashlight pointed straight up. And there, tangled in the branches 60 feet above the ground, was Miller. His body hung like a broken doll, caught in the fork of 2 enormous limbs. One arm dangled loose. His head was twisted at an impossible angle. Even from the ground, I could see his face. Mouth open in a silent scream, eyes bulging with terror. "How the fuck did he get up there?" Harrison demanded. There was no answer. No rope. No ladder. The tree trunk was smooth, impossible to climb without equipment. And Miller's hands showed no rope burns. No bark under his fingernails. Nothing. "Maybe the Japs hauled him up," Kowalski said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Why?" I asked. "Why take his boots? Why his helmet? Why leave his rifle behind?" Davis was shaking. The guides, they knew. They fucking knew this would happen. We retrieved Miller's body at first light, using climbing gear we'd requisitioned from the engineers. It took 4 men and 2 hours. When we finally got him down, the medic did a quick examination. "No bullet wounds," he reported. "No knife marks. But look at this." He pointed to Miller's chest and back. Deep puncture wounds. 4 of them, spaced exactly like the talon marks in the ground. Something had grabbed him, lifted him, carried him 60 feet into the air, and dropped him. That afternoon, I approached the Papuan elder. He was sitting apart from the group, staring toward the ridge. "Indava?" I asked simply. He nodded. "It begins." Command called it a Japanese trap, but no Jap could have carried a full-grown man up a tree without a sound. The night has teeth in New Guinea, and sometimes it has wings. After Miller's death, nobody slept easy. We doubled the watch, tripled the patrols, strung extra wire around the perimeter and kept fires burning all night despite the risk of giving away our position. The official report listed Miller as Kia enemy action, but every man in that camp knew better. We'd seen the marks. We'd seen where they found him. Kowalski tried to maintain order, but discipline was fraying. Men jumped at shadows. Conversations died mid-sentence when the wind shifted. Even the jungle seemed different now, watching, waiting, hungry. It was my turn on watch 2 nights after Miller disappeared. 0200 hours. The dead hour, when the world feels furthest from dawn. I sat in my foxhole with my rifle across my knees and the Papuan talisman in my left hand, thumb rubbing its worn surface like a rosary. The mist had rolled in thick. It moved through the camp in gray waves, reducing visibility to maybe 20 feet. The fires became orange smudges in the murk. The jungle disappeared entirely. That's when I heard it. A sound like canvas ripping. Rhythmic. Deliberate. Whump 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 whump. I froze, trying to locate the source. It seemed to come from above, but the mist made everything echo strangely. The sound grew louder, closer. The air itself seemed to pulse with each beat. Wings. Enormous wings. I looked up, and my breath stopped. Something was circling above the camp. I could see its silhouette through the mist. A shadow vast enough to blot out stars, moving with purpose and terrible grace. The wingspan was impossible. 30 feet? 40? More? It glided in a slow spiral, descending with each pass. Contact! I should have shouted it. Should have woken the camp. But my voice locked in my throat. The creature passed directly overhead, low enough that I felt the downdraft from its wings. Hot, fetid air that smelled like carrion and sulfur. For just a moment, the mist parted, and I saw it clearly. Leathery wings stretched between elongated fingers. A body covered in dark, mottled scales. A neck that extended into a head too large and too intelligent for any animal. And the eyes, reflective, like a cat's, but filled with something worse than hunger. Recognition. It saw me. I know it did. Those eyes found me in my foxhole, and for one eternal second, we locked gazes. I felt measured, evaluated, judged as prey. Then it banked sharply and disappeared into the mist toward the ridge. Did you see that? Davis hissed from the foxhole to my right. Tell me you fucking saw that. I nodded, unable to speak. What was it? I don't know. The lie tasted bitter, because I did know. Deep in my bones, in some primal part of my brain that remembered when humans weren't the apex predator, I knew exactly what it was. Indava. By dawn, 6 of us had seen it. 6 witnesses to something that shouldn't exist. We gathered in Kowalski's foxhole, speaking in whispers, comparing details. Harrison had seen the claws, curved talons each as long as a bayonet. Davis described the beak, hooked and sharp as a meat cleaver. Murphy, our radio man, swore he'd heard it vocalize. A screech that sounded almost like laughter. We need to report this, Harrison said. Report what? Kowalski snapped. That we saw a dinosaur? That we're being hunted by a fucking pterodactyl? They'll Section 8 every one of us. Lock us up. Dishonorable discharge. So we just wait for it to pick us off one by one? Davis demanded. Kowalski had no answer. I pulled out the talisman the elder had given me. The guides know about this. They've known all along. I stood. I'm going to talk to them. The elder was awake, sitting by a small fire outside the perimeter. He looked up as I approached, unsurprised. You saw, he said. Yes. Now you believe. Yes. He nodded slowly. Indava hunts at night, takes the weak, the isolated, the silent. He pointed at the fires. Keep the flames. Make noise. Stay together. It is ancient. It remembers when men were food. How do we kill it? His laugh was bitter. Kill Indava? Our grandfathers tried. They lost 50 warriors. Cannot be killed. Only appeased. Waited out. Survived. You don't report what you can't explain. Not unless you want a Section 8 discharge and a psych evaluation. Sometimes the dead speak louder than the living. Command came through on the radio at 0600 hours. New orders. Take Hill 457, a strategic position overlooking enemy supply routes. According to intelligence, it was lightly defended, maybe a squad of Japanese holdouts, nothing we couldn't handle. The hill sat at the base of the ridge. Indava's roost. We're not going there, Davis said flatly. That's suicide. Kowalski's face was granite. We have our orders. Fuck the orders. Davis was shouting now. That thing is up there. You saw it. We all saw it. Stand down, Private. Kowalski's voice went cold. We're soldiers. We follow orders. Or would you prefer a court-martial for cowardice? The words hung in the humid air. Davis's hands balled into fists, then slowly relaxed. Yes, Sergeant. We moved out at 0800. 12 men. The Papuan guides refused to come, no matter how much Kowalski threatened. They simply shook their heads and backed away, muttering prayers. The jungle grew denser as we approached the hill. The usual sounds, birds, insects, monkeys, faded to nothing. Just our boots squelching through mud and our ragged breathing. The silence was oppressive, physical, like walking through cotton. Harrison, on point, raised his fist. We froze. "Something ahead," he whispered. We approached carefully, weapons ready. What we found made Harrison vomit. Skeletons. An entire Japanese patrol scattered across the slope. 12 men, maybe 15, hard to tell because the bones were jumbled, broken, arranged in patterns that made no sense. Some were piled in cairns. Others were laid out in radiating lines like compass points. Several skulls sat atop stakes driven into the ground. "Jesus Christ," Murphy breathed. But it was worse than that. The bones were picked clean. Not a scrap of flesh or uniform remained. And the way they'd been broken. Long bones snapped lengthwise, ribs crushed inward, skulls cracked open from the top. "This wasn't combat," I said quietly. "This was feeding." We climbed higher. The bones became more frequent. Not just Japanese, we found American dog tags mixed in. Australian identification discs. Even older remains, probably Papuan, with tribal decorations still clutched in skeletal fingers. This had been happening for a long time. The summit of Hill 457 was a cleared area maybe 50 feet across. And there, dominating the space, was the nest. It was massive, 20 feet in diameter, built from tree branches as thick as my leg, woven together with vines and something that looked horribly like sinew. But it wasn't just vegetation. Scattered throughout the structure were pieces of metal, corrugated roofing from destroyed buildings, sections of aircraft fuselage, even what looked like a jeep's hood, and bones. So many bones. Human remains woven into the nest like decoration. Skulls positioned at intervals around the rim, their empty sockets facing outward. Watching. The stench was overwhelming, rot and decay and something else, something reptilian and ancient. I covered my mouth with my sleeve, fighting the urge to run. "We need to leave," Harrison said. "Now. We need to." The screaming started. Came from everywhere at once. High-pitched, ululating, barely human. The jungle around us erupted with sound. Not Japanese. Not human at all. "Ambush," Kowalski shouted. But there was no ambush. No enemy. Just that terrible screaming, growing louder, coming closer, making my teeth ache and my vision swim. Then I saw movement in the canopy. Shadows detaching from shadows. And I realized with bone-deep horror that the screaming wasn't an attack. It was a call. Indava was coming home. The light began to fail, though it was barely past noon. Darkness spilled across the hill like oil, and in that darkness, I saw wings unfold. It came for us at dusk, when the jungle breathes its last light and the shadows grow teeth. In the presence of true predators, we remember what it means to be prey. The creature that rose from the jungle canopy was nightmare made flesh. It emerged from the mist like something torn from prehistory, wings spreading impossibly wide, blotting out what remained of the daylight. The membrane between the elongated wing fingers was translucent, veined with black blood vessels that pulsed with each beat. Its body was massive, easily the size of a small aircraft, covered in scales that shifted from dark green to charcoal gray. But it was the head that froze my blood. An elongated skull, crested with a bony ridge, tapered into a beak lined with teeth like broken glass. The eyes sat forward-facing, predator's eyes, glowing with an amber intelligence that stripped away any hope this was just an animal. This thing could think, could plan, could hate. "Open fire!" Kowalski screamed. 12 rifles barked as one. I saw my rounds hit, saw scales chip and scatter, but the creature barely flinched. It circled once, twice, that terrible screech building in its throat, and then it dove. Corporal Davis never had a chance. Indava struck like a hawk taking a rabbit. Those enormous talons, each one a foot long, curved and serrated, punched through Davis's shoulders and chest. He screamed, a sound of pure animal terror, as the creature's wings hammered the air and lifted him off the ground. "No, no, no!" Davis shrieked, legs kicking uselessly as he rose 10 feet, 20, 30. We kept firing, but our bullets might as well have been rain. The creature gained altitude, Davis's screams growing fainter, and then, with a sickening casualness, it released him. Davis fell screaming and hit the ground with a wet crunch that I'll hear until the day I die. Fall back, Kowalski ordered. Fall back to the... Indava came around for another pass. This time it took Harrison, snatching him mid-run. But Harrison had his rifle slung, and as he was lifted, he managed to get off 3 shots point-blank into the creature's chest. Indava shrieked, a sound that made my ears ring, and hurled Harrison into the trees like a rag doll. We scattered, abandoning all formation, all training, all pretense of being soldiers. We were just men fleeing a nightmare. I dove behind the nest, gasping, trying to load a fresh clip with shaking hands. The Papuan guide's words echoed in my head. It cannot be killed, only survived. Murphy slid in beside me, his radio smashed, blood running from a gash on his forehead. What do we do? What the fuck do we do? I looked at the nest, the bones, the metal, the careful construction. An idea sparked, terrible and desperate. Fire, I said. We burn it. Burn the nest. That'll just piss it off. It's already pissed off. I grabbed him by his webbing. Look around you. This is its territory. Its home. We destroy that, maybe it leaves. Maybe it gets distracted long enough for us to run. It wasn't a good plan. It was barely a plan at all. But it was all we had. I pulled out a white phosphorus grenade, Willie Pete, we called them. Nasty things that burned at 5,000 degrees and couldn't be extinguished. I pulled the pin, counted 2, and hurled it into the center of the nest. The grenade detonated with a brilliant white flash. Flames erupted instantly, catching the dried vegetation, spreading through the structure with hungry efficiency. The bones caught fire. The metal began to glow red. Indava's reaction was immediate and terrifying. The creature wheeled in midair, abandoning its hunt, and dove toward its burning nest. It landed on the rim, wings spread in what looked like protective fury, and released a scream of rage that shook leaves from the trees. Run! I shouted. Run! We fled down the hill in a chaotic rout, leaving our dead behind, leaving everything behind. Behind us, I could hear Indava shrieking, could smell the acrid smoke of burning bone and flesh. The Papuan guides were waiting at the base of the ridge. They didn't say, "I told you so." They didn't need to. The look in their eyes said everything. We retreated. We ran. And we swore we'd never speak of it. But the jungle wasn't done with us yet. Desperation makes allies of enemies and brothers of strangers. We limped back to base with 6 men. Half our patrol gone, killed by something that didn't exist in any field manual, any intelligence brief, any rational understanding of the world. Command wanted answers. Kowalski told them we'd been ambushed by a reinforced Japanese position. Artillery was called in. Hill 457 was pounded for 6 hours straight, turning the summit into cratered moonscape. Orders came down. The position was ours. Secure it. Hold it. We were going back. But now we had a different problem. A Japanese counterattack was forming. Intelligence estimated at least a company-sized element moving through the jungle toward our sector. We were about to be caught between 2 enemies. One we could fight and one we couldn't. The night before the Japanese attack, the Papuan elder came to me. He looked older, more tired than before. "You burned the nest," he said. "We had to. Indava will not forgive. It will hunt until you are dead. All of you. Then help us," I said. "You know this thing. You've lived with it. There has to be a way." He was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. Finally, he spoke. "My grandfather told me stories. When tribal wars came, when the killing was too much, our warriors would perform a ritual. Blood, fire, and noise, these things confuse Indava, make it choose other prey. But the ritual requires sacrifice. A life freely given to draw it away. I'm not sacrificing anyone." "No," he said, "but the Japanese are coming. Much blood will spill tomorrow. Perhaps Indava can be pointed at them instead of you. It was a desperate, terrible plan. But we were desperate, terrible men. The elder taught us what we needed. Symbols drawn in blood, fires arranged in specific patterns, drums, or anything that could make rhythmic noise, to drive Indava into a hunting frenzy. The creature was ancient, he explained, but not mindless. It responded to old signals, old triggers buried in its primitive brain. When the Japanese attacked at dawn, we were ready. Their assault came from the east, a textbook advance with suppressing fire and bounding overwatch. But we'd positioned ourselves carefully, drawing them toward Hill 457, toward the burned remnants of Indava's nest. As the firefight intensified, as men died and blood soaked the earth, the Papuan guides began their ritual. Drums pounded. Fires blazed in the pattern the elder had shown us. And we'd salvaged bones from the nest, horrifying trophies that we now arranged in a circle. The sky darkened, though it was barely 0900 hours. A Japanese soldier broke through our line, bayonet raised, screaming a battle cry. He never finished. Indava dropped from the clouds like a stone, talons puncturing his chest, and carried him screaming into the canopy. The Japanese advance faltered. Men pointed at the sky, shouting in confused terror. Some continued firing at us. Others fired upward, at shadows and movement in the mist. Indava circled that terrible screech building, and then it dove again, and again. It took 3 more Japanese soldiers before their commanding officer ordered a retreat. But by then, Indava had tasted blood, had been pointed like a weapon at fresh prey, and it pursued them into the jungle. The sounds that followed, screams, gunfire, that awful ripping noise of talons through flesh, lasted for 20 minutes. Then silence. We held our position. We didn't pursue. We just sat in our foxholes, weapons ready, waiting. The Papuan elder found me as the sun finally broke through the clouds. "It is done," he said. "Indava has fed. It will sleep now. For a time." "How long?" He shrugged. "Until the next war. Until the next bloodletting. It is the way of things." 2 days later, we were relieved. A fresh unit took over the position. They found the remains of the Japanese patrol scattered through the jungle, bones already picked clean. They found the crater where Hill 457 had been. They found our dead. They never found Indava. The brass gave us medals for taking the ridge. They never asked about the bodies we couldn't recover. Some truths are too terrible for official records. They survive only in whispers and nightmares. The war ended. I came home. There was a parade in Des Moines, ticker tape and brass bands and girls kissing soldiers. My mother cried. My father shook my hand with pride in his eyes. Everyone wanted to know about my service, about the battles, about what it was like to fight the Japanese in the Pacific. I told them about the mud, about the heat, about brave men and narrow victories. I never mentioned New Guinea, never spoke the name Indava, but I couldn't forget. The nightmares started 6 months after I got home. I'd wake up gasping, sheets soaked with sweat, the sound of wings beating in my ears. In my dreams, I was back on that hill, watching Davis lifted into the sky, watching Harrison thrown into the trees, watching bones arranged in patterns that hurt to look at. I tried to move on, got a job at the hardware store, married a good woman named Helen, had 2 kids, lived a normal, quiet life. But every year, on the anniversary of Hill 457, I'd hear them. Wings in the darkness, a screech that made my teeth ache. And I'd know, deep in my bones, that Indava was still out there, still hunting, still waiting for the next war to wake it fully. In 1967, I returned to New Guinea. I told Helen it was for closure, to see the battlefields where I'd fought, to make peace with old ghosts. That was partially true. But really, I needed to know if it was real, if I'd actually seen what I remembered, or if 23 years and too much whiskey had turned a traumatic combat experience into monster stories. The country had changed. Independence had come. The jungles were being logged. Modern roads cut through what had been impenetrable wilderness. But when I hired a guide and traveled to the Sepik region, to the area where Hill 457 had stood, I found descendants of the Papuan guides who'd served with us. They remembered. More importantly, their elders remembered. An old woman, granddaughter of the elder who'd given me the talisman, spoke to me through a translator. She told me Indava was older than human memory, that it had been worshipped, feared, and bargained with by her ancestors for countless generations, that it slept in the deep caves of the ridge for years, sometimes decades, but always woke when warfare came to its territory. Has it been seen recently? I asked. She nodded. During the fighting for independence, several disappearances, bodies found in trees, the old signs. She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. It never truly sleeps. It only waits. She took my hand, pressed something into it, a carved talisman, identical to the one I'd lost somewhere on Hill 457. For protection, she said, because war comes again. It always does. And when it comes, Indava wakes. I left New Guinea 3 days later, the talisman in my pocket, and I've carried it ever since. Now I'm 78 years old. The nightmares have faded, but they've never fully stopped. I've told this story to my grandchildren, though I always frame it as a legend, a ghost story from the war. They think it's fiction. I let them, but sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I stand on my porch and look up at the stars, and I remember a darkness that blotted them out, wings that spanned 40 feet, eyes that measured me as prey. Indava is out there. I know it. In the remote jungles where war still touches the land, where blood still soaks the earth, it circles and hunts and feeds. It's older than countries, older than causes, older than the reasons men kill each other. And it will outlast us all. War makes monsters of men. But sometimes, it wakes the monsters we forgot were real. The jungle keeps its secrets, and some soldiers carry them to the grave. I've carried mine for 50 years. Now I pass the story to you, not as history, but as warning. Because Indava doesn't care about flags or borders or ideology. It only knows hunger. And wherever war goes, hunger follows. Asterisk asterisk. Some say it's still out there, circling remote battlefields, waiting for the next generation to spill blood on ancient ground. I believe them, because late at night, when the wind is right, I swear I still hear wings. This story is inspired by documented wartime reports from the New Guinea campaign, 1942 to 1945, blended with indigenous Papuan folklore regarding sky spirits and flying creatures, and dramatized for narrative purposes. Accounts of unidentified aerial phenomena and unexplained disappearances in remote combat zones exist in declassified military records, but supernatural elements remain unverified.